Hi everyone, let me show you a quick and easy way on how to make a Christmas tree skirt. Here we go. Hi everyone, my name is Christine here with Oxygen Farm Quilts, and I would like to thank you for joining me today. This is a Christmas tree skirt that I made a couple of years ago using a fat quarter bundle and the lines on my mat for cutting out my shapes. The mat that I have now has 30-degree lines on it, 45-degree lines on it, and 60-degree lines on it. For our Christmas tree skirt, these wedges are cut at a 60-degree angle. Now I have a 60-degree ruler here that I got from my grandma. It's a Kay Wood one, which she loved that show. A shout out to Kay Wood and her fans. If I place this 60-degree ruler on here, that's the angle. But typically, these rulers aren't long enough to create a large enough tree skirt. So let me show you how to cut it either with a ruler or with the lines on your mat. To figure out how many wedges you're going to need for your tree skirt is you will take 360, which is the degrees of a full circle, and you will divide that by whatever degree angle you are using. So I'm doing a 60-degree angle, and so that is 6. So I have 6 fabrics here. The first thing I want to do is I want to make a straight cut line on the top. The way I laid out my 6 fabrics is this top one is shortest going this way, and the next one is shortest lengthwise. That'll help me for when I'm cutting my wedges. You don't have to have 6 different fabrics. If you just have 2, you need to make sure you have enough to cut 3 wedges out of each of those fabrics to get your 6, or vice versa. If you just have 3 fabrics, then you would need to cut 2 of each. You can even do this with just 1 fabric if it's a real busy fabric and you want to do that. You do whatever you want to do. So if you have a 60-degree triangle ruler like this, and this one has a marking right there for cutting off the tip, you can just place it on your crisp cut line and then use your long ruler to place along the side. If I was doing it this way, I would go over as far as possible, making sure I don't have my selvages in there. But I'm pretty stingy with my fabrics, so I want to make sure to get the most that I can out of each one. Also to make sure, because this is short over here. It's not as long. I won't be able to get a wedge as long as this. So it's only, I have to make sure I have enough for this. That's why I did the shortest one on top this way and the shortest in length here, so that I can see that if I did put one over here, that it's not going to be cut off. Okay, so if I was using a ruler like this, I do my long ruler against it. That sets my space. I come over here, and I'm not gonna cut it because I wanna save this fabric for showing you how to cut it on your table mat if you have the 60-degree line on your mat. So I'll just give you an example. So then I would cut this side. Before I lift this ruler, is I want to put this back to where I had it. Along that line, I would remove this. These pieces would be removed. And then I would do the same thing on this side. Let's say you don't have a triangle ruler. You have a ruler that has a 30, a 45, and a 60-degree line on it. If you have this kind, then with your clean cut edge, you would take the 60-degree line going this way. You're lining it up there. Then you can just scooch it on over as far as you need. Making sure that's straight there. And then you're going to come here and you're going to cut that off. I'm going to put this here to show that that's gone, to show that this would be a line. So then your 60-degree line, you would line it up along this fresh, clean cut edge. You would line your 60-degree line up here and then cut a triangle this way. A 60-degree ruler like this is called an equilateral triangle. So I have 2 different videos that show how to cut equilateral triangles that use that method. So if you want to go check those out, you can. The 60-degree is this side. You see, if I put a 60-degree ruler here, it fits right in that wedge. It's not this side. This would be a 30-degree angle here. Right here is the marking for my 60-degree lines here. I want to come down about 2 inches. This is just making it so that you don't, if you come up to 60, you're going to have a perfect point up here, and that'll end up being cut off for the circle of your tree skirt. So there's no point in lining up right at the 60. So I come down about 2 inches to 2.5 inches. And so I am lining it up just on a line on my mat down from my 60-degree. The other part I'm looking at is this is the line that continues on my mat. And so I want to scoot my fabric over so that I am getting as much right at that tip, so I'm not getting the selvages. So I'm just relining up here. Lining it up on my mat and lining it up over here. It looks like I'll get just a little bit of my selvage, but I'm going to leave that until I know if I'm going to get enough over here, which I'm looking at it. Now there are 3 coming out of here. I want to make sure I have the correct one. So this here, this last line over here is my 60-degree line. So if you want, you could make a note over here like this is the one I'm looking at, not this one, not this one, this one, before you do any cutting. I'm looking at my fabric that is short this way. I should have just enough because it's only going to be as long as this fabric is, and it's only going to be as wide as this fabric is. So that's why I talked about, you know, if you are limited on your fabrics, because this came from a fat quarter bundle, but I had already used it for another project. And so some of this is from the bundle and some is from my stash. So I say use what you have. So that is going to cut there, and I'm just double checking to make sure. Okay, so I am 2 inches down. I am making sure that my lines are right there, and then this is all you do. I'm just lining up my long ruler with the 60-degree line on my mat. I want to make sure I'm not going to move my fabric, and now I'm going to this 60-degree line right here on my mat. Okay, there are our wedges. Now I'm not going to move this because I know this is my longest one, so I want to trim these up to equal this one. I'm just finding a line on my mat. I'm not being really particular about it because this is going to be hidden either if I turn this one or if I put binding on it. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, so. But either way, this could always be trimmed up later after you sew them. Scrapping. Okay. Let's go ahead and measure how tall this is. So for the diameter of this skirt, if this is coming in about 12 inches, so 12, 13, 14 is what it would be if we didn't cut off our point. So it's probably going to be 14 times 2. It's going to be about a 28-inch tree skirt in diameter. Once I have the layout that I like to put a couple of pins before sewing my wedges together to remind me that this is where the opening is going to be for going around my tree trunk. Remember to take those pins out. Okay, I have my backing and my batting down, and I have everything all smoothed out. And the main thing you want to look for is where the opening is, for where that will be wrapping around the trunk of your Christmas tree, to make sure that that is close but not overlapping, so that you'll have enough room for trimming that down. So now just pin, pin, pin. I'm going to quilt this on my sewing machine, but I don't want to take this big old thing over there, so I'm just trimming it off a little bit so it won't be so bulky. There are loads of ways that you can quilt your Christmas tree skirt. On the original one that I showed you, I just did straight line quilting. So I started up towards the center and I just followed along. And then when I got to a junction here, then I pivoted, went to this one, pivot, and went over. And here you can see the stitching on the back. I think straight line quilting is just so beautiful. On this one, I'm going to do my Serpentine Stitch, and that gives a nice wavy look to it, which is also real beautiful. Of course, you can quilt yours however you want. So I'll show you what the Serpentine Stitch looks like. So if you have that on your machine, then that might be an option for you. I am setting my machine to a wavy stitch, and I use this stitch an awful lot. So I have a sticky note that tells me what number it is and what I set my width and my length at, so I don't have to try to remember it every time. After doing examples, I have figured out what I like here. So it's called a Serpentine Stitch, and this machine shows you what it looks like. And then I like my width at 5.5 and my length at 2.5. And then you'll see that I have also attached the walking foot to my machine. I like to start quilting from the center and then work my way out. The first part I do is I go along the edges to make sure that those are tacked down good. Okay, I had my camera set at the wrong setting. It was set for time lapse, so there's a whole bunch of me talking in time lapse. So let me tell you what I am doing here. I began stitching where the opening is going to be for going around the trunk of the Christmas tree. So what I am doing with this Serpentine stitch is I just pick a line on my foot, and I'm choosing that as a guide to hit the lowest part of the peak here. So I'm just going around and stitching, and I am not stopping and breaking my threads when I get to the ends here. I am not stopping and pivoting when I get here either. I am just sewing in a continuous motion, going around and around and around until I get to the very end. Because this Serpentine stitch is super forgiving, and I just think it gives a lovely look. So here, let me do it in real time. Let me get my pin out of the way and show you what I'm talking about. So you can see I'm just kind of pivoting, and I just keep going around and around and around. And as I'm doing that, I'm adjusting over here, and I'm always smoothing whenever I quilt on my sewing machine. I'm always kind of smoothing as I go. So now as I'm coming to where that part is going to be cut, I'll show you what I do. So as I'm coming to this point here, I just keep on going. When you get to the edges and you come to your corners, This is expected for there to be more of a gap here than there is along the sides because your corners are just a little bit longer. So I just continue on, just keep going around and around. This helps secure these edges down anyway. One of the things I like to do when I get done quilting, whether it's going around in a circle or straight lines, is I like to run an iron over it before I trim it up. Now I always use 100% cotton batting. So if you have polyester batting, then you probably don't want to do this. This just helps kind of shrink everything back down again because we are dealing with bias here. And you can see I got a little bubble here, but remember, this is going to be cut off. So don't worry about that. If yours does this, don't worry about it. Everything can be fixed. It'll be okay. Okay, let's go trim her up. Now for trimming up your opening, I just run that right along the edge. Get that up out of the way. Pull that out. Okay, now when it comes to the center of your tree skirt, for the center of mine that I did here, you see it looks round, right? It's not. I left it this shape. I did not worry about trying to make that a circle. Now, if your tree trunk is going to be bigger than that, then that is when you will want to come in with some sort of circular shape that you think would be the same size as the trunk. Go ahead and put that on there. Now this one looks like it's about the same size, but you would go ahead and put that on there, center it on there, take a pencil, draw around, and then you will just go ahead and cut out that circle. If you need it even bigger, just make it as big as you think you need it. So for this one, like I said, I'm just leaving it. So, and I'm not going to use my rotary cutter. I'm just going to come in here and then just cut this shape. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to make my binding. Now, if you have watched my how to make a Dresden Christmas tree skirt, you will see in there that I have a confession. So I have never made bias binding. I've never done it. I've been quilting for 30 years. To be quite honest, I never even knew there was such a thing as bias binding until YouTube. I'm like, what's bias binding? So I get it. It makes it a lot more stretchy. You do whatever you want to do. If you want to make bias binding, go for it. If you want to use just straight grain binding, do that. I have found that going around this little circle like this, I didn't need any more stretch. So here, let me show you here. You can see, all my stuff out of the way, it lays just fine. It lays beautifully. So you do whatever you want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and make up my binding. Now to figure out how much binding you will need, if you are new to figuring up binding, you are going to go along and measure here. This is 15 and a half. So that's 15.5. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 15.5 times 6, because I have 6 sides, equals 93 inches so far. And then these two sides, that's a little bit more than, it's about 13 3/4. I'm going to round up to 14. 14 and 14 is 28. So add 28 equals, and then each of these are just a little over 2. I'm going to round up to 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. I'm going to round that up to 20. So 141 inches of binding. Most width of of fabric strips are 42 inches. I always round down to 40. So I'm going to take 141 divided by 40 equals 3.5 40-inch strips. So I'm going to round that up to 4 to make sure that I don't ever run short. I'd rather have more and cut some off than not have enough when I get to the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and get my binding made and get that put on. I hope you have enjoyed my Christmas tree skirt tutorial. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.